Kelly. I'm the Association Forum's editorial consultant, and today I'm going to be having a conversation with Shaina and Elizabeth from the American Chemical Society about some of the DEI initiatives they've implemented at their organization. Elizabeth, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I actually go by Beth. My name is Beth Craanen, and I'm the Director of Global Editorial Operations with the American Chemical Society and ACS in Publications.
Shaina?
Hi there, I'm Shaina Lange. I manage our Publishing Integrity Office in ACS Publications.
Wonderful. So why don't you guys tell me a little bit about the DEI initiatives just in general that you've implemented at the ACS journals?
Sure. So DEI has always been a priority for the ACS and publications and our journals program. But I think the world events of 2020 really catalyzed us and forced us to kind of re-examine a lot of the things that we were doing in our journals program. So in June 2020, we actually published a joint editorial with our leadership, our board of directors, our editors-in-chief, and committed to a number of initial commitments to, again, kind of re-examine what we were doing and start addressing the disparities that we knew were part of our publishing program and part of the larger chemistry enterprise. These initiatives kind of come from anywhere. Our approach is really to embed this value into everything that we're doing. So a lot of our initiatives come from staff, they come from editors, they come from the community, they come from dedicated staff who are looking at these things on a day-to-day basis.
Wonderful. Beth, I know we talked a little bit about the name change policy. Can you give me some more information about that?
Yeah, and actually Shaina really spearheaded this, but essentially that we've implemented an author name change policy to support that aspect if individuals are changing their name within their life. And Shaina, do you want to just dive into this? Because I know this is a really great story and one that came from essentially a community member that tweeted, and that really had major impact as to why we implemented this.
Sure, and I have to give full kudos to folks on the team. This was before I moved into this role, and so there were a lot of people involved in making this happen. As Beth said, so we were called to action on Twitter by a transgender chemist and advocate, Irving Reddig, who was already doing really great advocacy in this space. And they were personally dealing with having to change their name on a prior publication and on their CV, and at the ACS not having a mechanism to do that in an inclusive way. And so that tweet was shared with internal stakeholders. We ended up reaching out to Irving, who was actually part of our, it's a technical division within the ACS called the Gay and Transgender Chemists and Allies group within the professional development division, and it's now called ACS Pride. And so in reaching out to them, we understood the problem, and there was unanimous support internally that we need to figure this out. Why are we doing things the way that we're doing? And so our name change policy, as Beth noted, recognizes that people can change their names for a variety of reasons: gender identity, marriage, divorce, religious conversion, personal preferences. But this is a problem that disproportionately affects transgender chemists or people non-binary, gender diverse, and women. And these are already people who are already facing a lot of other challenges throughout their careers. And so historically, when an author wanted to change their name on an article, they were really challenged by these restrictive authorship policies where they could change their name, but it would involve a formal correction. It might involve notifying their co-authors. It might involve legal proof that, of their name change. And there's just so many situations that people can be going through and so many sensitivities surrounding a name change that it just left them with kind of two poor options. They would either take that formal path, risk potentially outing themselves or sharing those sensitivities, or they would just abandon their previous publications. And that obviously can have negative effects on their professional mobility and career advancement. So this was about 2 years ago, almost to the date, we launched a much more inclusive policy, and that enables authors to update their names on publications that they published with the ACS. And it's in a way that protects the record, it protects the article and the integrity of that record, but it also allows them to do that in a way that is recognizes how sensitive it is. So we don't notify anyone else unless they ask us to. We don't ask for any legal proof or documentation or anything like that. And we have safeguarding, steps throughout the way to make sure that they are who they say they are, of course. But we're able to do that in a way that protects the integrity of the record, meets kind of our business requirements, but more importantly, puts that control in the hands of the author.
That's great. What has been the feedback from members since you've done this?
It's been incredibly positive. I think really overwhelmingly positive. From the name change policy, so we've I think almost reached now 400 publications that we've been able to update in the last 2 years. And that dates back to the 1970s, I think. And we've been seeing a lot, especially when we first launched our policy on social media, around just hearing the impact of what it means for someone to be able to take ownership and claim the work that they've done, and in a way that represents their lived identity and their full kind of representation of themselves.
Yeah. And I think one thing I want to highlight, I think what Shaina kind of started off with, is that there were a lot of key stakeholders involved in the process to implement something like this. I think you always have the side of the policy aspect of things and what does the policy state, but then also the level of implementation and the change behind the scenes. At ACS Publications, we have nearly 80 journals and over 800 editorial offices. And so, the scope and size of our portfolio is pretty large, and the amount of authors that we have that have published with us over time. So when you think about implementing something like this, for us, it is a heavy lift. And there was a lot of key stakeholders internally that really bought into this project and really supported ensuring that this happened. And it's amazing what one tweet can do to really create a movement, and creating more inclusivity for others for a lot of reasons. And as Shaina said, we've heard a lot of positive stories and the impacts that it's had so far.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, kudos to you guys and your team for taking that feedback and, materializing it into something real. That's very cool. So you also have a cover art initiative. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, Shaina. Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So this is actually a really cool series that started at one of our journals, Analytical Chemistry, and this was purely the idea of one of the editors there. And it's a great example of how kind of one nugget of an idea can really expand into something. And so just for context, so every journal issue has at least one front cover art, and that's typically representative of like an article in that issue. And so within Analytical Chemistry and our journals kind of at large, we were really asking our editors to think about how can they creatively make the journals program and help contribute to a more inclusive journals program. And our editors are fantastic partners, and already they're the ones that are really in it day to day. So one of our editors at Analytical Chemistry recognized that our journal covers are a really great way of bringing visibility to underrepresented groups and the researchers behind the research that we're publishing. So they started out as a really small initiative at that journal. They undertook this initiative to essentially turn that cover art and solicit submissions from individuals who were from an underrepresented group. And they were able to then submit a cover artwork and then also an editorial alongside that, describing their story, their experience, their artwork, and they didn't need to have been publishing an article in that issue. That series was amazing. The reception was great, and you can check out all the cover art online on the Analytical Chemistry site. It was really successful. It got great reception from the community, and so we realized that went so well. We wanted to give other journals an opportunity, if they were interested, to do something similar. So now it's expanded to the whole portfolio. I think we just closed submissions last month, and so we'll hopefully see a few more here published. And if selected, the artists actually receive compensation for their artwork and their time. We are able to put some of it on our ACS store, so if people are interested in getting like a poster or a print, they can do so as well, or a digital kind of artwork. So we've now had several other covers published in the last year or so from Analytical Chemistry and other journals, and they're really, really cool. They really cover the spectrum of human diversity, and it's also a really great kind of showcase of the intersection between art and science, which I don't think we usually see on our cover art.
That's very neat. So these are members submitting the art, correct?
So they're, researchers of, typically in that field. They might be ACS members as well, but they don't have to be. So I think, what's really great about it is you can say through our submission process, which is essentially just a form, it was kind of a low level of lift. We leveraged a lot of our processes that we already had for cover art. And authors can kind of fill out a form to say, I'd love to have my submission, if accepted, published at this journal, which maybe, is a journal that is in their field or that they would normally publish at. But if that journal has a ton of, artwork submissions, here's some other preferences I have for other journals. So they really get a chance, and the idea is to hopefully accept as many submissions as we possibly can.
Very neat. I love that. So these seem like great initiatives. They're really unique, things that I haven't heard that much about before. Do you guys have any tips for other organizations looking for, ways to incorporate DEI that would be, it seems like just as meaningful and that would resonate with their membership?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think in general, just kind of taking a step back and really looking at what you're already doing in this space. Like the name change policy was one where we had a policy in place, but now we were kind of looking at it with this new sense of awareness. And so examining things that you kind of already have in place and thinking, does this really, allow people to succeed, everyone to succeed, and especially people from underrepresented groups. I think the other thing that we're really trying to do now that we've, made progress on a lot of our initial commitments, and now we're kind of looking ahead at where do we go next? Really listening to your community and your membership, or your, for us, our author and reviewer base, to really get a sense of what are their needs, what are things that they're feeling, what are the perceptions that they have on their end that maybe we're not aware of. So if you have a mechanism of collecting some of that data about their demographics, but also about their experiences, and you might get to things that maybe you weren't quite aware of.
Yeah. I would also say, I think one of the things that I've really loved about joining ACS is that I feel like a lot of our key stakeholder groups are really committed to moving the needle in this space. We know things like representation matters in a lot of ways. So considering systematic things that how you appoint different volunteer roles or positions and things like that, making sure that how you go about it is not exclusive versus trying to be inclusive of those processes. I do think, it's also taking steps forward, and it's not having to do everything, all at once. It's, what are the things that we can do to either create better representation, or things that, that we can look at that apply on, even in my space with operations and working closely with Shaina's team to look at our language. Are we being inclusive on that aspect of things, within our systems? And, I think there's a lot of steps that you can take to really just think about the system and what you've built and how you can kind of break down those barriers to be more inclusive ultimately for your community.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your stories with us.
Yeah, appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.